Can you do a remote closing if you can't physically attend the closing for the property that you're buying in Savannah? Well, that's what we're talking about today. So come along with me as we go interview Joel Gerber, a closing attorney here in Savannah, Georgia. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Karin Carr with Keller Williams Coastal Area Partners here in Savannah, Georgia, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Joel Gerber with Brannen, Searcy Smith. He is a closing attorney here in Georgia. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
So I work with a lot of buyers that are moving here from out of town, and often they say, I can't physically be present to sign the paperwork on closing day. So you probably run into that pretty often.
All the time.
Okay, so why don't you tell us what some typical options are for people when they can't physically be present on closing day?
Sure, absolutely. All right, so you have kind of two options. All right, one would be having someone sign as your power of attorney. What that would mean is, let's say we have that scenario where we have one spouse who is deployed, one spouse that's here, happens all the time. And so what we would do is we would coordinate, assuming we're using a lender, we would get a lender-approved power of attorney. And that document's ultimately executed by the person that's not here or won't be here. And it ultimately gives the person who's coming to closing the authority to sign on their behalf.
So a power of attorney really is just a piece of paper that says, it's okay for you to sign my signature for me.
That's all it is.
Got it.
It's that simple. And before we really start signing, we get what's called an alive and well. And what we have to do is we have to contact the person who's not here to confirm that they are actually alive and well. Because if someone, God forbid, is then deceased, the power of attorney also dies, and so it can't be used.
What if when it's a single person buying a home, they just say, well, can't I just sign all of the paperwork out here in Minnesota instead? Do you recommend that?
I don't recommend it. I think in a perfect world, which we all know doesn't always happen, you want to come to the closing. Right? I think it's really important to do a final walkthrough with your realtor, check the home, make sure everything's perfect, and then generally people would do that just before the closing and then come in. But like with a power of attorney, someone deployed, someone who hasn't gotten their orders yet, they live in Minnesota, yes, sometimes they just can't get here. And in that event, if you can't do a power of attorney, maybe you don't have someone here that can sign on your behalf, because generally they're not going to let anyone involved with the transaction, like the realtor, serve as a power of attorney.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll limit it to a family member, and maybe there isn't one here. And so in that instance, what would happen is they do what's called a remote closing. What we're required to do is the borrower, the person who's buying the home, will have to hire a law firm or a title company, depending on the state they're in, to assist them with the transaction. Okay. So what will happen is they'll retain that lawyer, they pay for that lawyer independent on their own, and we ultimately will overnight the documents, the loan documents, directly to that law firm or that title company. The borrower will go into that person's law firm on the day of closing, sign the documents. We actually ask them to wait and ask the lawyer to scan them back to us, so we can look at them, make sure everything was done perfectly, and then we provide an overnight label for them to overnight the documents back to us.
Okay.
We get them the next business day, and then it's called funding the transaction.
So what about when the seller has already moved out of the house, relocated to a new state, they don't necessarily want to come back to Savannah for the closing? Can we do the same sort of scenario with them?
Yeah, absolutely. We get that a lot. A lot of times sellers have left, they ain't coming back just to sign 5 or 6 or 7 documents. And so it's a very similar process, not as formal, but same type of precautions, procedures to make sure that everything's being done properly.
So sometimes with the additional fees involved for doing a mail-away closing, as they call it, sometimes it's the same price to just buy a plane ticket and come here. So even if you fly in the morning, sign, and fly back in the evening. So if it's at all possible for you to attend the closing in person in Savannah, we always recommend it. But if you have to do a remote closing, now we have it straight from a professional who can tell us exactly how it's done.
I think it's a much better experience.
Yeah.
I mean, generally a closing would take, 45 minutes. You walk out of here, you feel like you've really been explained all the loan documents, you understand the process.
Plus you get to eat all of this candy.
Oh yes, and all the candy.
Yes.
And get nice pens.
So thank you very much, Joel, for explaining to us exactly how the remote closing goes. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Good. And in case I've changed your mind about doing a remote closing and you would like to actually close here in Savannah, I did a video about that once before. You can click this link up here, and it talks about exactly what happens on closing day. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one. So around the white frame, there's a little dot, like right to the left of the fireplace. So thank you very much for explaining us. Right there.
That?
That's
Look
the camera.
there?
Yep.
So I thought you were setting me up with like a softball there.
Should I
That was good.
cut that part?